Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast, and what a week it has been. We had the court rulings limbo about Trump's tariffs, which then led to some erratic price action, and we are starting here as usual on the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we can see we are overall still sitting on these lows, and we finished the week on a bullish high test candle. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, we opened here with the gap to the upside, retesting this whole area here, tapping into this small piece of price action here to the left, and then it was not enough for a continuation to move the DXY higher. Instead, we turned around and sold off quite aggressively again and are now here in a consolidation. So overall, I'm looking for price to finish this consolidation here and then finish the leg into the previous low before we then see or might see a bigger directional change. This means for Euro US dollar, which is basically the inverse picture of the DXY, that we are looking for long continuations as similar to the DXY, since it's more or less the inverse picture. We were tapping into this piece of price action here to the left and then had a nice initial impulsive move, and I'm now looking for price to finish a proper, at least a 2-touch bullish continuation flag to then enter along here to potentially take advantage for the move into the previous highs here to the left, which would be quite a nice leg. And yeah, if that's the trade which breaks the high, then we are already in early. On pound US dollar on the weekly time frame, a very similar picture. We had a bearish week, however we had a very nice bullish momentum run before coming from this consolidation here, and it looks like we are still there's still more room to the upside, and I'm looking next week for a bullish continuation in form of a 3-touch, a bit steeper structure here. We had this high to the left, we had an initial head and potential head and shoulder. We failed to connect to the downside. Instead, we then turned around here after retesting this area, had the first smaller continuation, then a very small hover outside. We left this small liquidity area here and are now forming a bigger bullish continuation or potential bullish continuation. And if I get a nice 4-hour structure with the reversal candlestick pattern in this area, then I would definitely enter along in this area. US dollar Canadian on the weekly time frame, we can see on the bigger picture we had this first initial impulsive move. We are now looking for finishing of this continuation pattern and are then looking for the next leg to the downside. Initially, I thought we might see some more bullish pressure in this area, but we obviously failed to connect here after we had this nice descending structure. We were discussing that before into this low to the left, and then we failed to connect in this area here for a long continuation, which then gives even more weight to a bearish continuation. However, right now we need very clear price action, and I'm looking for price to finish a 3-touch or some form of structure into this liquidity area here to the left to then enter a short in this area. It's not uncommon for a US dollar Canadian to form a bit bigger structures and take more time before we see some form of commitment. We can see these consolidation phases, they were quite long, or also these corrective squeezes, they take some time. So overall, it still could make sense for price to form a bigger structure in this area before we see the next bigger directional move. US dollar Swiss francs on the weekly time frame, we can see we had previous week, overall we are still in buying territory. However, we had this very strong bearish week last week. We had this ascending channel here, which you can see clearer on the 4-hour time frame. We are still trading below this low to the left here, and there's still room to the downside. And going down to the 4-hour time frame, we can see we had actually quite clear structure. We had this nice 1, 2, 3 here. Then we had corrective price action, then a sudden drop out, suddenly a drop out. here in this area and then formed this nice two-touch structure and are now, we missed the low here yet. So does it make sense for price to come back up one more time like that? Not really. If we get a deliberate structure in this area, then I would entertain a short continuation in this area. Looking down to the 1 hour time frame, we can see we had a very, very nice impulsive move here. We left this small liquidity area. We then left the gap here. This is not really a clean base. It's just a wick. However, if price is coming back up and showing some form of a deliberate reversal candlestick pattern on the 1 hour, I would still wait for a 4 hour confirmation before I enter a short trade in this area. US dollar yen. Oh, again, these yen pairs, they have a bit conflicting price action. We can see it's very wicky. We had a bullish week. However, it's a high test week. We still have the gap here to the low. We had two very bearish weeks before. And I'm now looking for price to, here on the 4 hour time frame to finish the move to the downside. On the 1 hour time frame, yeah, we can see it is on the lower time frame. We have conflicting price action. We have here this small price action, piece of price action. It's kind of a running channel. You can see it clear on the 15-minute time frame. Then we had here a fairly structured flag. You could argue that actually price did enough already here for a potential sell-off. We had a nice reversal pattern here. We had a washout if this is the more relevant liquidity area, which it definitely is. However, we see price failed to connect in this area and is now starting to raise again. This could also be just Friday evening price action. So it does not necessarily have to go back up, but we do know price sometimes, if it wicks to the beginning of running channels, very often this price action gets filled before we see the next more aggressive move to the downside. So that's what I'm looking for, preferably early next week. I'm going back to the 1 hour time frame for price to retesting this area here and showing some form of candlestick reversal pattern, which I would happily enter a short trade. However, if this was really just Friday evening price action and we see an early dropout next week, then I would entertain a small lower time frame hover bear flag continuation in this area to enter a short, which would still be more than enough room on the bigger picture to manage the trade to the next bigger inflection points, which are actually here, and then closing the gap here on the higher time frame into this area down below. Moving on to Canadian dollar yen, they have conflicting price action, so this is a bit a tricky one, but a very interesting one. We have this on watch for quite some time. I just start here on the 4 hour time frame because we had this very nice structure. We discussed that, we finished the structure with the structure within structure, sold off, and now it's really getting interesting. We had an initial nice impulsive move, then the first small continuation, and then here we failed to sell off and we failed to connect to the downside. However, we then creeped back up, retested this low here to the left, sold off, and then failed to sell off again. And if we look here on the daily time frame, it was not just shortly, we failed over multiple times. You can see here we had multiple chances to sell off further, and we ended 4 days on wicks, and then some indecisive price action following after that. So this looks like we have a bit more bullish pressure, and that's what I'm looking for next week. I'd like to see, going here to the 1 hour time frame, I'd like to see for price to form a deliberate structure here in this area. In this case, I need a bit more because we are not coming from a clear value area. We don't even tapped into one of these more significant area of interest. We just turned around here, which then could be a potential head and shoulder, but I don't really like trading this pattern anyway, so that's why I'd like to see a 3-touch structure in this area. So we have the first potential base, and then I'd like to see a 1, 2, 3 for a bullish continuation. However, if we see a move, an impulsive move to the upside, breaking this high, then we know the overall head and shoulder in this area is definitely off the table. And if we then see on the lower time frame a bullish continuation here, then of course, yeah, that would still be okay because it has enough room to manage to the highs or then even to the extended structure on the higher time frame. Pound yen, a similar picture. I start here on the 4-hour time frame as well. We had this expanding structure, we tapped into the override, we sold off aggressively, and then we failed to connect further to the downside. So what am I looking for next week? I'm looking for a bullish continuation because we did not even tap here the previous high. So that does not really look like an M-style pattern, even though we started selling off aggressively. So we have this small liquidity area here that could be the first and the second base for a 3-touch continuation pattern. And this is a 4-hour pattern, so that's a big pattern. Keep in mind, we could play that maybe even on the daily time frame. We will see next week. But as long as we trade above this high here, within this potential bullish pattern, I'm leaning towards a long. If we see an aggressive sell into these areas here followed by a bearish continuation, that's the time I would change my bias. And even if we are here, that's like only 50% of the run to the next bigger area of interest. So we are still early enough to warrant a trade to the downside. So but I have to see very clear price action before I change my bias. Pound Australian dollar, also a tricky one. We had this on and off, and we had this initial impulsive move. We had a longer consolidation, another impulsive move, then another consolidation, a failed to sell off. Instead, we have this very, very, very corrective price action. It almost looks like a running channel to the upside, an ascending channel, and I'm looking for a bullish continuation right now. I'm flipping the chart because I see bearish price action a bit better, and we discussed that a few times. We have here a potential channel, and before we see a breakout or a bigger drop out of a channel, we tend to see these flat structures here. And if I see price finishing this 1, 2, 3 flat structure, I would entertain a short in this area, even though we are sitting here on this area of interest. It is a 4-hour structure, so it is weighted time frame. I need to see some clear candlestick price action before I would entertain a short, because the positioning right now on this area of interest makes the whole setup slightly higher risk already. Switching back to normal, but you can see now in this, with this thesis, the overall long trade would make sense. Pound Swiss francs, we had this on watch as well. We are overall going to the weekly time frame. We are still in buying territory. We have a bit bearish selling pressure right now. We have another bearish high test candle, but from the overall positioning, we are still in buy territory. And going down to the 4-hour time frame, sequence wise, we tapped into the low, and then we had the first smaller continuation, then a slightly bigger continuation, and I'm now looking for an even bigger continuation pattern. So positioning and sequence would make sense to look here for a bullish continuation. We have here a potential expanding, a 1, 2, 3 with this could be an override. So ideally we see something like that, because keep in mind it's a 4-hour time frame. So seeing a 4-hour rejection followed by a 15-minute flag or something like that in this area would be perfect to then enter a long trade. I know it is pound, it is a Swiss francs pair, so they tend to have a bit wider spreads and are a bit weaker. So I prefer to trade them on higher time frame and try to avoid the lower time frame. So if I get a very clear candlestick reversal pattern in this area on the 4-hour time frame, then I would probably entertain. Sorry, I'm going back one more time. Probably entertain, or preferably entertain, a 4-hour reversal candlestick pattern over a 15-minute flag. Euro pound, On the weekly time frame, we can see we are still in a downtrend. We have room to the downside to this previous area of interest. It's actually a value area here, and we left the gap, and we are still in a quite impulsive move to the downside. We have now the first bullish week, which is a low test candle, so that looks like we have some bullish pressure right now. This could also be just a start for a bigger consolidation, a corrective phase here before we then see the next bigger drop to the downside. On the 4-hour time frame, I'm looking for clear price action confirmation for a short. We do see that the overall theme is it's corrective price action. We did not have any impulsive move in here, so that's why I'd like to see a structure forming into this liquidity area here. This is the start of the last move, and we had here a 1, 2, 3 as well, sold off. We left this small liquidity area, which could be the first high for a structure, and that's what I'm looking for, a deliberate price action next week, also 4 hour to enter a short in this area. However, if we see a bullish continuation and another impulsive move to the upside here, breaking this high, and then we see a bullish continuation on the at least a 1 hour structure outside this liquidity area here, then I would change my bias and look for long entries. Yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.